Hello, everybody. My name is David Ross, and I'm here with Mr. Gary Kunz of the Fall Creek Museum. Do you have anything you want to introduce yourself for?
Nothing outside of the fact that I'm a retired teacher. I've taught history for 35 years.
Oh, really?
Got involved with the Historical Society after I moved back down here to property that I owned, and my wife and I have been very active in the museum since then. We've worked with the schools quite a bit. We worked with Dave's father quite a bit, in fact. So, shoot.
Well, that's great. So have you lived in Fall Creek all your life, or have you moved here?
No, I was born and raised here. I went through school. I graduated from Fall Creek High School. Soon after I graduated, I went into the service. After I spent 3 years in the Navy, I went to college at Eau Claire, got a BA and a BS degree. Taught 2 places in Minnesota and 1 place in Wisconsin. I spent my last 27 years teaching in a suburb of the Twin Cities. Retired in 1994 on the Eau Claire River, and we've enjoyed our coming back to my hometown.
Yeah, that's great. So how did you get involved with this whole museum?
Well, my background is history.
Sure.
And obviously I would be interested in it. I got involved more than I really wanted to. It just so happened that the longtime president of the Historical Society, who was a teacher, Mr. Smith, in the elementary, well, I guess he was a principal at the elementary school, happened to die. And they were looking for a president, and somehow I got railroaded into it. And I spent the last 10 years being being president of the Historical Society.
That's great. So what is your title here? Are you like a curator?
I'm presently the vice president.
Sure.
We had a gentleman who retired in the eastern, who was from Fall Creek, but retired from working in the eastern part of the state, and he's also very interested in history, so we persuaded, Luther Strasberg is his name, we persuaded him to become president, and I offered to stick around as vice president to help him out whenever we could. So
That's great. So you went to school here, you said, in Fall Creek?
I graduated from high school here.
So have you noticed any changes in the town, such as like the new structures being built or being remodeled or anything like that?
Well, noticeably, of course, the town has increased in size.
Yes.
When I graduated from high school in 1952, I think the population of Fall Creek was probably not even 700. And now it's probably closer to twice that number in population. The town hasn't really changed that much. I mean, in terms of structure, about the only really important addition to the town is the new cheese packaging plant out on Highway D.
Yeah.
But outside of the fact that, some of the town buildings, for instance, everybody's aware of the chicken chaser that burned down a few months ago. That was actually the oldest building in Fall Creek when it burned down.
Really?
It originally was a hotel. It was probably built about 1876, 77, and it remained a hotel, and then it went through a number of different types of endeavors, not a post office, a pharmacy, a store, a grocery store, and eventually it ended up as I guess you could call it a saloon. But the town hasn't really changed that much. There have been some new construction of homes, obviously to take care of the increase in population. But, the main street, there are a number of buildings gone. I don't know if you looked at any pictures, but at one time we had a very large grocery store. It was called the Mercantile,
Yeah.
which was on the corner just across from the Unity Bank now, which is Unity Bank's parking lot.
Yeah.
That's been removed. Some of them have changed ownerships or their function, but basically the town hasn't really changed. The people haven't really changed that much either. But that's essentially all I can see. There's some progressive things going on. I don't know if you noticed when you went over, if you've gone over the bridge down here, you noticed a bunch of construction equipment there, an excavator and so on.
Yes.
What they're actually doing is they are dredging a silt basin, a catch basin that catches the silt and the mud coming down Fall Creek when it rains. They're catching it there so it doesn't flow into the pond down here. There's a real progressive idea about improving the mill pond in terms of recreation and habitat and so on. But to be perfectly honest with you, Fall Creek has, for some reason, and maybe it's just me, has never been a really progressive town. And I think part of that is due to the fact that it's so close to Eau Claire. Because you take a look at some other towns, they've made a lot of changes. Fall Creek stayed pretty much the same. I think if we took a time machine and you took a time machine and went back to the 1950s, or say after the end of World War II, you wouldn't be lost. It would be pretty much the same as you remember it now.
Yeah, and I guess the thing about Fall Creek being right next to Eau Claire is that all the change is happening in Eau Claire, which has definitely been growing a lot more over the years. And then Fall Creek being a small town has not changed as much.
It's always been, well, I think Fall Creek has really, in terms of population, has really served two groups of people. One, it served people who work in Eau Claire, because it's very simple, especially nowadays, to drive the 9-10 miles that you want to have to drive to go to work at a place of business in Eau Claire. The second thing is that it's well, and the term they use sometimes is it's a bedroom community, that people live here but they work in Eau Claire. The other thing is that it's been a place for retired farmers, although that segment of our population now, of course, is really declining. There are less and less farmers. So there are, and I think, I'm not sure because I haven't seen the figures, but I think there are more younger people moving into Fall Creek now. Property taxes are not out of the question for young people. There are still a lot of older homes that come on the market that can serve as a first home, at least a starter home for young couples. But I think Fall Creek is starting to acquire more younger people than in the past.
Yeah.
I just noticed also that the school population, when I graduated from high school, which was incidentally 1952, there were 23 kids in my class, in my graduating class. I don't know what there are in yours now, but I imagine it's close to 100, isn't it?
I think it's around 70.
70, yeah. Okay. But yeah, there were 23 kids in my graduating class, and interestingly enough, we had a class reunion a month or so ago, and there are still 13 of us alive out of the 23.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. We're all in our we're upper 80s already.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's a change. There's more younger people coming in. the old group that pretty well set the tone and the thinking and so on of Fall Creek, whether it was politically or whether it was economically or what it was. That group is starting to decline in importance, and I think more younger people are stepping in and taking over some of those positions.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is something positive.
Yeah, that's good.
I think that's very positive.
Yeah. So now, us being in a museum and everything, do you mind maybe doing a little showcase of some items that you really think are either really cool or have a lot of historical value in terms of the town?
No, we'll turn the lights on and walk around with it.
Yeah, we can do that. Sure.
Sure. You want to go now?
Sure.
Okay. Give it to- There we go. Let me get some lights for us. Oops.
It's been a long time since I've been in here.
Whoops. There we go. Well, we tried, my wife has been very active in setting up the displays, and we've tried to keep most of the stuff local. I mean, dealing with local history.
Yeah.
It's a small museum. Of course, we added this section on about about 3-4 years ago. And most of this material here is local. It's been donated to the museum by local people. You know, this would mean absolutely nothing to you, but I just looked over there. You see Anna Zimmerman's chair.
Sure.
Now, you don't know Anna Zimmerman. You've probably never heard of her.
No, I have not.
Okay, well, Anna Zimmerman was the wife of a local beer distributor, and she was, well, what makes her kind of interesting is that I believe she, now I gotta be careful here. As you get older, the memory goes a little bit. But I believe she lived close to 110 years. Now,
Wow.
I may be mistaken, but there's a very, you know, to most people, it's an old chair.
Yeah.
But it's Anna's chair, and everybody who grew up in Fall Creek knew Matt Zimmerman, her husband, and knew Anna, the wife. If you want to take a picture of, well, there's, all right, we got 2 looms here.
Yeah,
I'll let you get in there. We've got 2 looms here. This monster here, which
Yeah.
was donated to us by a local farmer whose wife was a weaver. It's to most modern, to look at a modern loom compared to this one is, it's called a barn loom. And if you read the little blurb up there on the top, the reason it was called a barn loom is, of course, when settlers came here, eventually the wife had to, you just didn't run to the local clothing store and buy cloth or anything. You made your own. You wove your own. But again, you just didn't run out and buy a loom. So most of these old looms were handmade, like this one.
Sure.
And it's called a barn loom because basically the first thing that a farmer did when they moved into the area was built a barn. And the idea is that whatever materials he had left over, he made a loom for his wife. That's why you've got the massive loom.
Yeah, it's quite big.
And that little loom is a kind of an interesting one. It's called a depression loom. Now, someday, I don't know how much you studied the Depression of the 1930s, but much of the so-called New Deal was to make work, because we had a very large segment of our population unemployed, and to make work for people. And somebody got the bright idea, well, we could put a lot of women together weaving cloth. So they built these very simple looms. This one was actually built in Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Wow.
And they built these little simple looms. They were light. They could be carried around. You're not going to carry that one around.
Yes, yeah.
We had to completely take it apart to get it in here, and then rebuild it in here. But it was light. It could be carried around, and you could weave small garments and small bolts of cloth and so on. So there's, I like, my wife weaves a lot. But, you know, there's, you walk around here and there's stuff that you younger people are never going to really know what they are or what they were used for. Or, well, let me just give you an example.
Sure.
Now here's a simple piece of wood that was carved by somebody. We have no idea where it came from. Do you know what it is?
Is it part of like a mixing thing?
No. Look at the shape of it. You know what that is?
I do not have the slightest.
Well, I'm kind of handicapped. But this was to carry.
Oh,
You
I see.
hook buckets on each end.
Oh,
This is called a yoke.
Yeah.
This is a yoke, yeah. A carrying yoke. Well, I don't know, that thing is probably 100 plus years old. But somebody knew what they were doing when they built it. You got a place for the neck, you got a place to hang the buckets on each end.
Yeah.
You don't see anybody using carrying yokes anymore. But that's one of the reasons why we kind of made this museum, just to preserve some of the important stuff around Fall Creek.
Yeah.
Well, you ask me if if what you see something that you're interested or curious about.
I don't have too much time left.
There's the upper right picture there. See, that's the original.
Oh, I see.
That's the original chicken chase.
Sure.
That is the Stope Hotel. If you read, you can see Fall Creek.
Yeah.
That's the chicken chase.
That's really cool. Person 1871. Wow. Well, thanks for your time.
You what? If you want, I've got all the time in the world. I'm not,
No, I already have an 18-minute video. I think that's quite enough.
okay, well, that's fine.
I really appreciate that.
What's that?
Sir. The stool or the lantern?
The stool. Yeah, okay. What do you think that was used for?
I don't know.
It's old.
It looks like it.
Well, in the old days, people milked cows. What did they sit on?
Oh, they sat on that. Okay.
That's a milking stool.
Huh.
That's a butter churn, which. Well, okay. Like I say, I'm not in any real hurry.
No, that's fine. That was really great, though. That was very informative. I appreciate that. Though.
Okay, well, see if I can find my key. Where I stuck my key.